weather, for the she'll tell me the high for Sunday because she's not telling me the low. It will go what it is.
Yeah.
Daddy, where's the freezer around them? Well, I had to talk this morning and bring the freezer around a little bit. She can drop.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, apparently it was a really good game.
Good morning.
Stephen, I'm going to put the phone down. Yeah.
How is everybody doing today?
Doing well.
Yeah. Cold and wet, and it's not getting any warmer. That's for certain.
No, it's going to be supposedly 24 in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. That doesn't sound fun. But it'll be what it'll be, I guess. So today we are on Psalm 23 and 24. Psalm 23 is obviously one that you probably know.
Yeah.
And if you're like me, required to memorize in confirmation class. But we're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to talk about Psalm 24 as well. And so let's go ahead and get started. Shall we pray?
Yeah.
Holy God, we thank you for this opportunity to gather here. We ask that your blessings be upon us. We pray that you would inspire us through your words so that we can inspire the world. In Jesus' name, amen. Before we get started, I want to share an update with y'all about Robin. Oh, hold on. We'll wait for my mother to connect with audio. So she had surgery a week ago Friday about to get more lymph nodes. As it turns out, those lymph nodes were not clear. And so she is going to have to go through chemo as well. I think she said, hold on, I'll tell you exactly. It will be
8 then 12 weeks.
Yeah. That one is a different one. Wait a minute. Why isn't it going backwards any farther than that? Oh yeah, I know. 8 treatments once every 2 weeks, and then 12 more treatments after that for some sort of a different treatment after that, and then radiation after that. So it's going to be quite a ride for her. So please keep her in your prayers. This won't start for a few more weeks. She still has to heal up from surgery first. So she should be returning back to the office tomorrow. Assuming that they take her drain tube out today, which she is more than ready for them to do. So, let's look at Psalm 23 then. Share screen. There it is. Let's see, slideshow. All right. The Divine Shepherd, a Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. So read over that one, and we will chat about it.
Yeah. That's the way and that's the way I say it. It is.
All right. This is not a long psalm, and it's a familiar one. However, let's be honest. This is the version that we often now read in funerals unless otherwise requested. However, this is not the version that many of us know. We know the King James version. The NIV version is a little closer. The RSV version is a little closer. This one is different, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But first, I want to share with you the fact that this was not a popular psalm until probably the turn of the 20th century. It was just one psalm among many. And hang on, because I had it up. There it is. So it in long about 1858, this preacher named Henry Ward Beecher described Psalm 23 as a nightingale of psalms. He said, "It is small, it is a homely feather, singing shyly out of obscurity, but oh, it has filled the air of the whole world with melodious joy, greater than the heart can conceive. Blessed be the day on which that psalm was born." And it was alluded to the Valley of the Shadow in Little Women. And by 1916, it was the standard funeral litany in Methodist churches, which is likely why it shows up in so many of our funerals today. And so, again, for a long time, it was just a regular, everyday psalm that, like any other. But its popularity, especially in the United States, has taken off. Again, this is not like the psalm of all psalms for Jews. This is not one that Jesus quoted, but it just, I guess it hits people in the right spot, especially in funerals. And quite particularly also, it may have something to do with the fact that during that time, the King James Version was the English version of the Bible, and the meanings there are a little bit different than what we have. So let's look at it. It is a Psalm of David. Nothing spectacular there, or nothing we haven't talked about. It starts out and ends with talking about God, or Yahweh, because you'll notice that it has the Lord is in all caps in the third person. And then in the middle, it switches to the second person. Just be aware of that. It's sort of, first it's claiming that relationship, and then it's saying to God. I mean, so it sort of shifts to like prayer-like language in the middle and then shifts back out. But the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That the word want does not mean God gives me everything that I've ever asked for. You know, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to want a new car or want a new house, or, you know, that God gives me it all. It's, I mean, it's very much in terms of imagining us as sheep in a flock. I mean, that the beginning of that is, that's what it intends. And so what does a shepherd do for the sheep? I mean, he's not out there buying them toys, you know. The shepherd is providing for their needs. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Now, this is important in this neck of the wood, well, in that neck of the woods. I mean, realize this is Israel. Green pastures are not quite as plentiful there as they are here. Yes, ma'am.
When we were in Israel and in the Judean wilderness, our guide read this psalm, and in the distance there was a aqueduct, and around it there was a little green spot. And she said that it probably would, for the people hearing it in Israel, it meant he makes me lie down in the green spot. And she also said that the only still waters that they could count on were those in the aqueduct.
And those were the only waters that sheep would drink from.
Yeah.
Sheep won't drink from raging waters.
That's right. So anyway, that made a whole difference to me in how I heard the psalm whenever she explained how it applied in Israel.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, it's important to us because we sort of imagine these long grassy hills, probably like in Ireland that we see a bunch of sheep herder movies. You know, I mean, that's kind of how we imagine sheep herding. Not like that there. And so, you know, but again, sheep don't. I mean, so it's very important that God finds for us the luscious of all places to be. And let's be honest, we've all laid down on the ground at some point in our lives. Would we rather lay down in nice, green, lush pastures or sandy rocks? I mean, you know, now a beach is a different story. We're not talking about beaches, but you know, the option is, you know, grass or a trail.
Well, we even opt for towels if we're on the beach most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, with grass, we don't need a towel. Towel and so on. And so, you know, so God provides rest, God provides water, God provides food right there in the beginning chapter, in the beginning verses of this. Now, the thing is, in verse 3, what do we usually hear in 3b? And when I say 3b, you know, A would be, well, once again, verse 3 starts with he restores my soul. But then after that, he leads me in right paths. What do we usually hear?
Guides me in paths of righteousness.
The paths of righteousness. You hear the difference in that? What connotation does the paths of righteousness generally mean? What do we think of with that?
That we're following God's, well, the 10 Commandments and.
Yeah, we're doing the right things.
Right.
And there is that connotation there, but it's completely different when it's, well, not completely different. I mean, it can mean that, but it also says the right paths, which is the better translation, as opposed to the wrong path. I mean, so God guides us in the right path to where we're going. Yes, that includes our righteousness, but it also means we're going the right way, you know, as opposed to a dead end or driving us into a ditch. It's that right path as opposed to the wrong path. And yes, that would include being righteous, but and walking in the footsteps, following Jesus is, doing the right things, but it's also going the right way. And more than anything, that's what this point is pointing to, is that this shepherd leads us the right way to where we're supposed to go. Now there's a lot of talk about the next part. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And I believe that's capitalized. Does the NIV have shadow of death?
Uh,
No, it's small.
But is that what it says?
Through
Yeah.
the valley of the shadow of death.
Okay. Let me look up a King James version real quick. KJV.
It says even though rather than yea.
Yeah, right. It did.
And the even is capitalized.
Well, yeah, that's the beginning of a sentence.
In the Jesus Storybook Bible, it says that it's the dark and scary, lonely places.
Right. Which
Right.
is exactly which is honestly a better translation. That's the KJV Apocrypha. Where is the King James? Okay, there it is. No, yeah, the valley shadow of death is not capitalized. Okay, at least not there. So, but what we do know is this: the valley of the shadow of death. I don't know about y'all, but I always sort of imagined that was a real place somewhere that they were referring to. It is not. It truly is. It truly is what the NRSV says. And it was described like this. I'll pull it up. So I can read to y'all exactly what it says, because it was actually pretty cool. The author of my commentary talked about when he was walking through there. All right. There is some evidence. Hold on, let me go back here where I can see y'all. There is some evidence in Hebrew for the use of a hyperbolic word construction, such as this one to express. Okay. The Hebrew word salawet is apparently the combination of two words, sel, shadow, and death. So together they express the superlative, in this case, something like the shadowiest of all shadows. Thus, contemporary translations tend to replace the traditional translation with a more prosaic, deepest shadow. And then he says, shows literal meaning is not entirely lost on the readers. It's probable the author of Psalm 23 used the phrase purposefully to describe the danger and threat that confronted the flock in crossing these wadis. And then he said, I remember hiking down Wadi Kelt from Jerusalem to Jericho with a friend. A narrow ancient Roman aqueduct, still flowing with water, clung to the canyon wall at the height of several hundred feet. We began our journey following the rugged footpath on the opposite canyon wall, dipping at points at the bottom of the wadi and back up to the other side. It took only about 2 such trips down in the shadowy depths of the stifling heat at the wadi bottom, and this is early in the morning, and scrambling back up the steep limestone wall to regain the path before we overcame our natural reluctance of heights and continued our journey walking along the outer rim of the aqueduct, or in the most narrow portions in the aqueduct itself. So these valleys, these drought out wadis, were stiflingly hot and dark. And so what happens in deep, dark places like that? Well, you've got people hiding and you've got animals there. You can't see what's going on. And so it was extremely dangerous to go through them and scary to go through them, all of which people would have known this that lived there. And so that would be the picture of their mind of going through these horribly deep, dark valleys. And so it wasn't the valley of the shadow of death, because here's the thing. This text isn't really talking about life and death, which is how we often use it, right? We talk about, because another change, it's, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever, right? This says my whole life long, which again is a better translation. We struggle with the better translation of this because it sort of changes the meaning. Because again, for Jews and the people first hearing this, it wasn't about, this wasn't about like the time, like right before you die. This was about life, that God brings us to the lush places and takes us on the right paths. And even though we walk through scary places, we know that God's got our back. God's got the weapons, one hand in his left and one hand, the rod and the staff. Just knowing that God's there with them, we got comfort in that. It's sort of like this. When you were a child, you never felt afraid when your parents were around, unless you had done something wrong and then you were afraid of your parents. But it was that comfort, like, that parents brought. You were in the same house with your parents, but if they weren't there, you were afraid somebody was coming to get you. But as soon as they were home, there were no bad people anymore. Of course, knowing what we know now, we were no more safe with our parents home than we were with them gone. They just kept us from doing stupid things. They protected us much more from ourselves than from other people. But it was that feeling of safety. The difference is God is our protection. And so it then it switches. We stop in verse 5. It shifts away from the shepherd sheep motif. Shepherd sheep motif. That was a better way to say it. And it starts we're talking about people again. Okay. We aren't sheep anymore. We're people now in this. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Now there's a couple things about this. One, it's like, haha, God's got me, not you. But there's also, if you had enemies around you, you're probably not going to stop for a snack. We know the story of David and how many times, there were several occasions when people were after him. I promise you, he wasn't stopping in the middle of Saul hunting him down when Saul was nearby and had a picnic. But basically, that's what the psalmist is saying. I am, that confidence in God's protection is that you continue to provide for me, and you set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. And they see that you have my back. And then, and you anoint my head with oil. This is basically a claiming. Oh, I left something out in verse 3 about leads me to the right paths for his name's sake. That has, I mean, that's kind of if you think about it, we just sort of gloss over that. But what that's saying for his name's sake is saying, because of the power of names in that culture, the name is descriptive of who the person is. And so basically, leads me in the right path because that's who God is. And then it goes down to going back, my cup overflows. In other words, still, it's not only provide for my needs, you provide an abundance for me. There's an abundance of the gifts that we receive.
I heard somewhere, and I don't remember where it was or who it was now, but that very thing they were talking about, all of our cups are overflowing with problems. And I never did think of it that way. I'm thinking of it like you're saying. It's overflowing with what we have received, not our problems.
Yeah, I don't think that's what.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That may be, somebody may have been saying, we think our cup overflowing with problems, but what it really is God, they're overflowing with blessings. I would hope that's what they're saying, because otherwise that's a total misreading of what's being said here. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Isn't that a cool concept? That what's chasing us is goodness and mercy. Now, and the next part is a theme that is carried on throughout a lot of the next, like a lot of the Psalms after this. But from what I read, this is sort of the first time it's introduced. I will dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. Dwelling in the house of the Lord is the temple. And so basically, I'm going to set up shop in God's house and doing what God calls me to do, and being in today's terms, it would be, I'm going to be very active in church, I guess. I'm going to live in the temple. Well, but it also means wherever I am, God is.
Mhm.
But again, house of the Lord forever takes on the connotation of heaven, which is what we like to, which is why we have used it forever in funerals. But that's not what this is saying.
Well, I think when it says in the house of the Lord forever, that could be today, tomorrow, and forever.
Yeah. Oh, it does. It most definitely does. But my whole life long is not forever.
No, that's right.
And what does the NIV have on that one?
It just, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Yeah.
And capitalized.
Yeah, right. And again, the better translation of that is my whole life long. Which, I mean, the better Hebrew translation. But now, hopefully I didn't completely ruin Psalm 23 for us. But that is one reason that I often give the option of what version do you want read at your funeral?
Yeah.
For one, if we're saying it in unison, people have memorized this version. People have memorized the other one, including me, by the way. But also because this actually speaks much louder to the bereaved than it does to the one who has died. Because that darkest valley is what they're walking through now.
Yeah.
And so that's one of those things that, you know, it still fits at a funeral, very much so, but the message is slightly different. And if I was preaching it, I could also take my whole life long and make that eternal.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I would. But remember, they also probably in David's time, the concept of eternal life was not there. Their concept was more eternal rest. And so, you know, that would on another reason that it wouldn't say dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So, any questions or comments about Psalm 23?
I still like it.
Oh yeah, it's a great psalm. It's a wonderful psalm. That's not one that there are certain hymns that I think get overdone in funerals. I've never thought that Psalm 23 gets overdone in funerals. I think it's always good to have it. But yeah, I mean, I assure you that most of the most common funeral hymns are not going to be at mine. One might be the only one that's and it's used in funerals probably a lot here because, well, I have a hand in planning them, and it's because I know the story behind it, and it's my favorite hymn. That was good. I can tell you the story. Horatio Spafford.
As soon as you said that, it's my favorite too.
Peace.
Peace Like a River. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that one.
Yeah. And knowing because if you know the story behind it, it's
right.
Okay. Well, the story behind it is this. After the Great Chicago Fire, he lost everything. And I think he had already lost a son at some point, but he lost everything, his business and everything. And so they were headed back to England, and he sent his wife and daughters on ahead of him. And then he got, after they went, he got a telegram from his wife that said that the boat went down. His daughters had all died, and she was the only one left. And so he hopped a boat and headed to England. And when his ship reached the area where that ship had gone down, he wrote this hymn. And the power of him being able to say, "It is well with my soul," in the midst of that kind of pain is pretty significant. And so that's, I mean, you know, as for the sound of it, it's not my favorite, but the meaning behind it is very powerful. And so that's, and when I tell somebody that story while we're planning a funeral, it often makes its way into the funeral.
Well, for future reference, it is my favorite.
Okay. I doubt that I will remember that. You might want to tell somebody else. Like, I don't know, Tony. Write it down, put it on file. So let's move to Psalm 24. Entrance into the temple of David, a psalm. They sort of switched it up on us. The earth is the Lord's and all that is in it, the world and all those who live in it, for he has founded it on the seas and established it on the rivers. Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord, and who shall stand in his holy place? Those who have clean hands and pure hearts, who do not lift up their souls to what is false and do not swear deceitfully. The earth is it went backwards. They will receive blessings from the Lord and vindication from the God of their salvation. Such is the company of those who seek him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob. Salah. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord, mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. Salah. So, let's see. Did it stop sharing the screen?
Yes.
Okay, I don't, because that was weird. I hit a button and it was just done. So read through that and then we will chat about that one. We ready? Okay, what did you hear in that one?
Everything belongs to God.
Yeah, I like the way that starts out. Yeah, you could take those and hang some stewardship sermons on that one, can't you, Hugh?
That's for sure.
And it's a great reminder that everything that the world, he has founded it on the seas and established it on the rivers. The seas and the rivers in those days were places of uncontrollable chaos and fear. I mean, they used them, but let's be honest. Their weather report was basically by looking at the sky. I'm sure that they could, sailors could read it fairly well. But still, like there were certain places, like the Sea of Galilee, for instance, where high pressure systems would converge, and it's sort of like cold fronts and warm fronts would hit at the same time at the Sea of Galilee a lot of times, and it could get ugly quick. And you know, if you're out on a boat in the middle of a sea and you see a storm a coming, nowadays we can pull up a weather map and know, like, boats will, first of all, they can avoid them. You know, when there's a hurricane coming, like our Navy will go out to sea to avoid it, not stay put. That ain't the way they used to do it, nor did they know a hurricane was coming. And so it was a very frightening place. And so then also remember that creation was between the waters. We talked about that last week. And so basically God calmed them. God wrestled the seas and won. And that's, I mean, that was a very big deal. And now who shall ascend the hill of the Lord? We're talking about the temple, the hill of the Lord, because the temple was at the highest point of the city. Totally unrelated fact. Southern Seminary is at one of, if not the highest point in Columbia. And realize it was built probably long about World War I days. And who are the Lutherans in South Carolina culturally? We are Germans. And if you are not of German origin, it's because you used to not be a Lutheran, or someone else in your family was not a Lutheran. And see, you know, both sides of my family, German. I mean, you know, and so there were rumors and fears that the Germans were building a fortress on top of the hill to bomb the State House. I don't know at what point the Baptists realized that it was actually just a seminary of future pastors, and that they would be okay. But I guess it calmed down after a while. Maybe one of the elected officials was like, I think my pastor went there. You know, but at any rate, when it moved from when the seminary moved from Lexington, which, if you didn't know, where the Lexington Museum is, used to be Southern Seminary.
Really?
Yep.
Never knew.
And so, which is pretty cool. But in case you didn't know, there's a whole lot of Lutherans in Lexington, and so, you know, that's what we do. So back to this, the temple was established. It was up on the holy hill of the Lord. And so who can go there? Those who have clean hands and pure hearts. And so it talks about, in some ways, physically making yourself ready to go, who do not lift their souls up to what is false, and who do not swear deceitfully. But what that's also saying is that that none of us are worthy to go up there. That God makes us worthy to be able to go to the holy hill. Now, for Jews, it would, I mean, they thought that it was possible to follow all of the laws in their minds, because Jesus sort of trips us up when he starts talking about, you know, anyone who hates his brother has committed murder, you know. But see, so you can have clean hands, but the pure hearts, that gets into a lot more, yeah, that gets a lot more challenging. And so and a lot more impossible. So, those who do not lift up their souls to what is false and do not swear deceitfully, they will receive the blessing from God and vindication from God of their salvation. I think that goes, it's pretty self-explanatory. Such is the company of those who seek him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob. And so basically what it's saying is, seeking is like, it's that desiring to want to be near God, to want to do what's right. It doesn't mean necessarily doing it. It's trying, is how I understand that seeking. It's
Right.
yearning to seek the face of the God of Jacob. And then we sort of, and as we've talked about in the past, Salah is like, it's a different, the music changes at that point, and a lot of times so does the theme. When you see that, it would have been pretty cool if somehow they had preserved the music that went along with these psalms. I bet it was better than what we chant, which wouldn't be hard, by the way, because there's a reason we don't. And there's a reason a lot of churches have kind of cut that practice out, is because it's dreadful and hard to sing. But when you see Salah, it meant that the music changed. And there's a lot of those little blurbs. I mean, we've come across many of them. And so it's almost, I imagine it like watching a television show. And well, it's like this. Any of y'all watch TV with the closed caption on?
I have.
Yeah, I mean, like, I kind of do now. I mean, in some of them, like, I don't mind it as much, because if the world's going on around, you can still kind of follow. Well, it also commentates the music. It's not just the words, and it'll say dramatic music,
Right.
cheerful music, and so what this does, I mean, like, these directions are dramatic music, cheerful music. Well, this a lot switches it to cheerful music, because lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. This turns to a litany. Like, this part is very much like, it's almost like the beginning of a worship service. And imagine, and who is the King of glory? And then sort of the congregation will respond, the Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. And then it repeats, lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. And who is the King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. And I mean, it's just imagine like this procession, and like, here comes victorious God into here. And it's, I mean, that'd be a cool way to start worship. Although we would read it like this: who is the King of the Lord of hosts? He is the King of glory. That would be our response. But I'm pretty sure that is not what how they would have read it in those days. And so, that would be one of those occasions that, I mean, just joy. I mean, it's just that joy and responsiveness. Like at a ball game, for instance, I say go, you say where, but that's what the question is, and the immediate answer would be a litany. And I mean, that would be a really cool litany to have in church, I think. Maybe I'll do that someday. All right. Any questions? Comments? Complaints? All right, everyone. Well, y'all have an excellent day. And Hugh, I think you said that you will not be with us this afternoon.
Yeah, I may be a little late, but I'll be there.
Okay. All right. Mom, you said,
I won't be there next week because it's my week to serve food for our senior member meeting.
all right. Well, you can watch us online.
Okay.
Y'all have an excellent